So this team is named We Love Jax, and they're a team from UCF.
Hi everyone, my name is Talia, and I'm from UCF.
And my name is Ehsan.
Okay, so we're the third team presenting, and it just so happens we're solving the third problem. So our product is called Block Quote. So I want to start with some context. The housing crisis is an imminent problem in American society. There is about 50% of the population that considered affordable housing to be an issue. There are 21 million households that are spending over 50% of their income on just housing alone. And then 7 million of home shortage, there are 7 million home shortage for low-income families. Even with these numbers, the population rate is increasing with the urban population, at least, and renting costs is also increasing. So this is creating kind of a very big problem for America because rent is increasing, people are moving more to the cities, and we don't have enough housing for them. So the problem that we're trying to solve is strategic recommendations for affordable housing investments. So as I mentioned before, there is a need for housing in America, and there are investors that are willing to invest in land, in property, and also even cities that are willing to invest. However, the main problem with this is where to invest and how we can use that money. Investors spend a lot of money and a lot of time and resources on just data collection alone. And we kind of want to mitigate the stress for them. So basically, we just want, whenever you're kind of investing into a property, you really want to know who you're investing into, what is the community, and we're basically trying to see assess the neighborhood, like what type of neighborhoods are they investing in? What type of demographic? What is the race? What is the age group? What is the marital status? And how they can best adjust these investment plans to meet the need of the people that they're targeting. So our solution to this problem is essentially Block Quote. And Block Quote makes housing research faster and smarter. So we use AI-driven surveys to simulate real-time community feedbacks. So essentially, there are agents within our program, and these agents are mirroring the people that the community is being invested in. So you're seeing the impact of the investment plan on actual people through these agents. So basically, they give you a response to how they view this investment plan. Do they view it favorably? What do they like about it? What do they dislike about it? Would they like to move to this community, and why would they like to move, or why would they not like to move? So basically, we show a diverse of personas based on different people, show what they value, what they prioritize, and essentially this helps investors kind of narrow down and kind of fine-tune their plan to best fit the demographic that they're targeting. So this just basically helps them with the initial research. It gauges the sentiment of the community, and it also helps them refine their plan early on so that they can spend and allocate the majority of their resources on actually helping the community instead of just on research alone. And how do we go about this? I'll give it to my partner.
All right, so with our solution Block Quote, we first had to do some data analysis and pivoting. Originally, the data came in long format, and for our use case, that was pretty much useless. So using a Python script, we essentially pivoted that data from a long format into a wide format. We were given a whole bunch of data in different files. We combined all of that data into a single file as well. And on the right-hand side, you can see the architecture we used. It was every row is a different tract ID, which is essentially a different location in Jacksonville. And the columns were also the features and labels that we are looking for. Okay, and the data we were looking at was income, race, gender, education, age, housing price, and the number of children. In the end, we had 341 rows and 178 columns. Now, before I move on to the method description, I'd like to preface that this challenge, a lot of solutions was more like headed towards a machine learning role. Well, we wanted to take a more like creative route inside of that. And instead of finding these solutions, finding the investment plans, we wanted to make the research process for determining if the investment plans is a good idea or not quicker, faster, and cheaper. So here's the method we used. We created digital agents to represent these personas. These personas are the people than the citizens that are living in Jacksonville in your demographics. Then, we use the data to give these personas actual characteristics and living situations from the data. And all of this was powered behind the scenes with GPT-5's API key. All right, and we'll go ahead and move on to the demo now. So, just a quick one. This is the dashboard for Blockrope here. And you can see you can create a new session if you'd like. And once you create a new session, you just have to select the city. We didn't have time to implement the data for other cities, so we only have Jacksonville. And you can determine the number of personas you want to create. Afterwards, you simply put in your housing plan. Okay, and this housing plan should specify features, any amenities you're looking at, features of the housing plan, any things that are close by that you think that residents should know about. And this is really important, the census tracts that you are targeting, the demographics you want to move in to your new housing area. And once again, you should want, that's recommended to specify. 5, okay. And now as it's generating, behind the scenes, what's happening is this housing plan, this census tracts are being given to the LLM, and the LLM is deciding, looking at the data that was in the CSV file, deciding how can we create personas that is representative and accurate to the people living there, the target demographics, okay? And we decided we want to create 5 of them, so very soon we'll see these 5 personas. And you can see Vanessa Hart, Marcus Jefferson, and 3 other people were created. You can go ahead and edit these personas, and you can see the level of depth we're going at here. They have their traits, their goals, primary concerns, and those weren't gathered from data. But they were just generated to give these data sets more diversification, okay, and to really make them human. We can also add a persona and delete personas. Now, if we continue, it will go ahead and go to actually finding what each persona thinks about the housing plan. That'll take a while, so I already have a preset over here. Now, this is the main dashboard. Over here, you can see the persona's decisions based on each demographic group, okay? So you can see their gender, race, ethnicity, education, marital status, and even age group. You're looking for a pattern, a story behind these decisions. On the left-hand side, you can see a scenario agent, and you can go ahead and chat with it. Get an overall idea, why were these agents making their decisions? Why were these personas deciding to not move or move into our housing plan? On the right-hand side, you can also see more specifics on every single agent, or every persona, and chat with them individually as well. All right. Now, finally, if you'd like, you can save the data in a nice little PDF format that essentially has all the data that was on the dashboard as well. So, going back to the results, Talia will handle this.
Okay, so what exactly are we hoping to accomplish with this project? We really want to help the investors identify the weaknesses within their plans. For the demographic that they're targeting, for the community that they want to invest in, how are their people going to react to this plan? And since the agents are going to tell the investors what they like, what they dislike, and even chat with them, the investors can come up with a more comprehensive plan that is more equitable and sustainable for the community that they're investing in. And this kind of gives a more humanized outlook on the data, since we're not just, we were given a huge set of data, but we're also chatting with quote-unquote actual human beings through these agents. And this essentially just gives the investor more insight into the vibe of the community that they're investing in. And this saves them a lot of money because it gives them research, it gives them an insight into the direction that they want to pursue their research. And this will help them allocate more money into actually fine-tuning their project and actual research direction, as opposed to gauging the scope to begin with, which is mass surveys, town halls, that takes a lot more money.
And finally, we want to look at the conclusion. How do we plan to expand this product? There's 2 main flaws right now. First, we don't have the data for the other cities. We want to go ahead and implement that data so we can go ahead and compare and contrast with these other cities. How does our model work against those compared to Jacksonville? Another one that's even more important is to enrich the data. If you want the personas to make the most accurate choices, the most realistic choices, we need to give them more data. For example, one noteworthy one is crime rates. We couldn't find any crime rate data in the census tract level, so we didn't have time to implement that, but that's definitely a future goal. And overall, we plan to partner with planners and developers so they can use this to make their research quicker and less costly. The end. Thank you.
Hello. So when you specially use LLM to model based on data, the problem is you don't know how much data actually it has worked. Forget about the generating part. I'm talking about, let's say you have a lot of data, you have certain number of rows, you have certain number of columns. Now, you are asking LLM to use those data to come up with the results. So what guardrail or what sort of things you have done to make sure that the LLM has actually analyzed what sort of data, what sort of reasoning it has done to come up with? Because, especially if you use that as a prompt or context, it's a huge thing. So what sort of things you have done on that front?
Sure. Yeah, so there's two main things we did. First of all, with OpenAI's GPT-5, they have an ability, we didn't implement this, we ran out of time, but they basically have an ability where you can see exactly the thoughts and reasonings that your LLM was making. And if you'd like, you can review that to double check if the reasoning was on par with what you'd expect. But what we also implemented is, you were talking about the hallucinations, if I'm right. If you give the...
No,
right? Okay.
not hallucination. I'm talking about the analytics. LLM will also always try to avoid big data.
Right. So we avoided giving it all the data and instead just gave it the data for the census tracts. And beforehand, we had heuristics that calculated the weights it needed to make it a representative model. We gave the weights along with the data just for that census tract to the LLM, and it created these personas based on that.
Okay, so let me rephrase my question. Because it's an analytic problem first, like the first layer is an analytic problem. Have you thought of using analytic model first and just use that aggregation of results to the LLM to take the generated text? Have you thought of that?
Analytics, like creating a machine learning model that will determine...
Yes, because LLM is not particularly suitable in your use case, what you are trying to do for the analysis part. So that's why I'm saying.
Yes, we've thought of that, and we've even thought about implementing this solution along with other groups' implementations for problem 3. Because what we wanted to approach it more creatively and actually make it for the researchers instead of giving that answer on where to invest next.
You sort of asked this or answered this a minute ago, but what can you do to ensure the data accuracy and prevent neighborhood community bias within your model? You mentioned earlier that you weren't able to put crime rate data into that. That's probably something that would be important for the AI, so that they're spitting out neighborhoods for a developer that needs to, whether it need to be revitalized, bring affordability to the neighborhood or whatever, crime rate, food banks, food insecurity, AMI, 30% lower AMI, those type of data sets might be useful for this AI for developers, especially if you're focused. I think this could also be used, in my opinion, for renters and homeowners, identifying certain neighborhoods that have more affordability than other neighborhoods when they're doing a housing search, and expanding it wider. But with your focus on investors, how do you add those, neighborhood and community biases, or prevent those biases from taking over a model when you add crime rate or you add something else to the model to weigh it out?
So to better understand, you're saying once we have so much data, how do we make sure that the LLM doesn't focus too much on one specific aspect?
Absolutely.
Yes.
To prevent a developer, not prevent, but to lead a developer one way or the other. Don't want it to necessarily oversimplify an issue. Understood.
So the more data we have, the more personas we have, we expect that we have more diversified results. And the ultimate goal of our product is to mainly just catch edge cases. Am I going in the completely wrong direction with this housing implementation plan? And if it is, you're going to see massive amounts of the personas saying, no, we don't want to move here. And that's going to help you move toward a better direction. So once you do start the actual research process, then it'll reduce costs by getting rid of that beginning wasted time.
Right, so like in your example, you had 5 personas, but you can obviously do as many as you need, and if 80% of those personas are saying one thing, you're sort of getting guided to a correct answer.
Exactly.